Hey everybody, this is Dave Tribbett here with another great Focus on the Community interview. Today I'm super excited to be here with Steve Brown, and we've had a couple great conversations. And Steve is a futurist, author, and coach. He is the founder and CEO of Possibility and Purpose. He's also the co-founder of Providence Chance Network, and I'm super excited to be talking with you today, Steve. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background and your businesses?
Sure. So, hi, Dave. Nice to see you. And hi, everybody listening to this. So I worked at Intel for 30 years. So I have a history and a deep experience from the high tech world. And I love high tech, but I'd had enough of being in the high tech world in a corporation. So I struck out on my own in 2016 and started my own business. And that business, my core business, is Possibility and Purpose. And that is where I act as an independent futurist, so an applied futurist. What that means is I help companies to figure out what will the world be like to live in 5 or 10 or 15 years from now, and how can they use technology to drive innovation into every aspect of their business. Everything from, what are the new products and services we could create? How could we streamline operations? How could we elevate the talent that we have by supporting them with technology? What are some new channels, new customers, new markets we could reach using this new technology? And then how do I create new business models? So that's what I do. I have clients all around the world, everything from literally Fortune 20 to companies you've never heard of. So, and everything in between in 4 continents, I think, is the last count I have. And the other company I'm part of, I'm co-founder of the Providence Chain Network, not Providence Chance Network, Providence Chain Network, which is bringing transparency to commerce, to global commerce. So helping consumers to learn more about the products that they buy, giving them a window into the truth about the products that they buy. So not only how is it made, but who made it, and what did it take to get it from the ground to their front door. How much energy was involved, how much water was involved, were any nasty chemicals involved, and to really bring transparency to commerce. So those are the things I do, and I do them because I love doing them. I love helping people to imagine and build a better future. That's what my core business does. And then the reason I'm involved with the Providence Chain Network is I really feel like this has a capability to change the world. By empowering consumers with information, it will enable them to vote with their wallets to buy products that align with their values, and that will then it also gives brands the capability to align supply chains behind their brand values and ensure that they're keeping their promises to consumers. And that has to be a good thing. It's an amazing tool to actually help us fight against things like climate change, child labor, ensure food safety, fight pollution, and those sorts of things. So that's why I get up every day to do that work, because I think it's really important for the future of humanity.
And it's so interesting because there was a certain time, and with talking with you today and the conversation that we had previously, I used to think that that there was some type of negative aspect of disruptive technologies and automation and all that coming into our world. But I started to realize that it was a lot better, especially like around the time of Fukushima, that robots and these different types of systems could exist to do important work that was boring, repetitive, and a lot of times dangerous. And so I love the fact that that's kind of the world that you exist in, and informing and educating individuals on what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, technology can do the 3Ds for us: dirty, dangerous, and drudgery work, right? And there is a lot of fear about automation, and we all need to pay attention to this because it will certainly destroy some jobs. At the same time, it will create a bunch of new ones that will be better jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we have an automation problem per se. What we have is an education challenge, because we're going to need to help people to upskill and reskill, to get them into these new jobs that are created. And that is our challenge as a society. And it has always been our challenge as a society. You know, when the Industrial Revolution, when we moved people from working in the fields to working in offices and factories, you know, the average lifespan went way up, wealth generation improved, and now less than 3% of people work the land. And those that do, it's highly mechanized, and they live long, healthy, prosperous lives.
Wonderful and great points. I've heard that, you know, we went from basically the industrial age through the information age, and now we're kind of merging into the age of automation. What do you think about those processes and cycles? Because some of the schools even seem like they're trying to figure out like what some of these new jobs will be.
Yeah, I think about it very slightly differently. So the way I characterize it is the three ages of work are the physical work era, which was largely, you know, the industrial era and pre-industrial era, and then the knowledge work era, which is largely the information age, and then whatever we're going into next. So in the physical era, you know, what we did as a species is we created essentially mechanical muscles. And that's what the Industrial Revolution was all about, being able to do physical work, in some ways commoditizing that dirty, dangerous, boring physical work, and making machines do it instead, which created, you know, an enormous amount of wealth and improved our lifespans. It's no fun, you know, following a sweaty beast with a rusty piece of metal and dragging it through a field in the hot sunshine day after day. You know, there are better ways to do that. Now, you know, there are still people in the physical work era because there are tasks that are just too difficult for robots to do. You know, we still have a lot of people who are construction workers, you know, working in factories, making stuff, craftspeople. You know, there's still a lot of physical work to be done. You know, I'd argue a surgeon is still physical work. There's a lot of knowledge involved, but it's fundamentally physical. But most people have moved into the knowledge era. What we are doing at the moment, having created mechanical muscles, we're now creating mechanical minds, which will be able to take on some knowledge work. And those mechanical minds will enable us to create more sophisticated machines that also can take on more physical work, offloading us so we can do other things. And I think a lot is talked about this notion of automation. And automation is coming, and it will offload some tasks for sure. But what I'm most interested in is that these technologies will be used for augmentation, which is to not replace us, which is what automation is about, but to elevate our skills and our capabilities in really exciting ways. So we're moving from the physical to the knowledge era. I think what lies beyond that is what I'm calling the augmented era of work, where we partner with machines rather than being subordinate tools to us. And they elevate our skills and our capabilities and make work more meaningful, more rewarding, and more enjoyable for us all.
That's fascinating. I was actually going to ask about what the difference is with some of those relationships between man and the machines and the assistants. If we go back to like to the you know, Detroit, and you know, was it 25, 30 years ago, they had the robotic arms that would flip the whole, you know, under was it chassis and of the vehicles and stuff like that, where human beings couldn't do that. But you're talking about a different type of relationship, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me give you a couple of examples to bring it to life. So, I mean, on a physical level, I mean, in those Ford factories, they are now using exoskeletons, which is machinery that you wear that allows you, for the workers who are working underneath those chassis, it allows them to use tools and provide upward force without having to actually get tired, because the machinery provides much of that force and responds to the movement of those workers. So it is augmenting their physical strength and stamina. Perhaps another more interesting one is what Autodesk is doing. So Autodesk, which has big offices here in Portland, where I'm speaking to you from today, they've created, they've been creating computer-aided design tools for decades. And they've now started incorporating this AI-based technology called generative design. And what generative design does is it takes the design that the engineer, architect, or designer has created. It could be anything from an office layout of a floor in a building to the design of a chair or an industrial valve. And it takes that design and it riffs on it. So it'll come up with 100 or hundreds or thousands of design alternatives, which have the same characteristics, but they're achieved in a different way. And so they might be, some of them are going to be cheaper to make. Some of them will be physically stronger. Some of them will have other characteristics, tensile strength, that sort of thing, that is more valued. So it presents the engineer or designer with this wide range of alternatives, and they're able to pick the one that best meets the need. So it's a collaboration in this case of a human and a machine working together. And the end result is something that the machine couldn't do on its own and the human couldn't do on their own. So it's a true collaboration. And what this leads you to is a change in the way we think about these tools. Because when Autodesk first delivered these capabilities in their tools, I was talking to one of their VPs, who's a friend of mine, and he was saying that they expected that designers, when they use these tools, would report, oh, they're great. I'm so much more productive. I get more done in a day. And that happened. They are more productive. But what surprised and delighted them was that designers said, I don't only feel more productive, I feel more creative, because I'm able to explore a much bigger design space, and the designs I'm delivering are much more creative and imaginative than I could do on my own. So what we've created here, we're using AI not to replace a human, but to augment and boost our creativity and our imagination. And that's awesome.
That's amazing.
And that technology, that as a futurist, you're always looking for signals from the future. And to me, generative design applied in this context is that signal from the future that says, this is the way that all of our jobs might be in the future, where AIs are partners with us and elevate our skills and help us to be more creative, more intuitive, to make better quality decisions, and so on.
It's an amazing point. I appreciate you sharing those thoughts.
Yeah, of course. That's what I'm here for.
Could you tell us a little bit about your background that brought you to the point of working with Intel and doing the work that you do now?
Now, I was a little kid. Still had a good head of hair then. I was probably 10 years old when I bought my first computer magazine. And now, it's very typical for kids to be playing with tablets and smartphones, and they're 5 years old or younger. But back then, this is in the late 70s, to age myself, it was pretty rare for kids to have access to computers. I got access to one because my dad worked at a university and he was a physics professor. And so he would bring computers home from work and I get to play with them. And even at that young age, when I think, 95% of the population didn't even really know what a computer was. And I got my hands on it and I'd be up late at night in the dark, lit by the glow of the green screen, because it was only available in one color back then, green. I could tell, even at that young age, that this device in front of me was going to change the world and that I wanted to be part of it. And so, that launched me on a 30-year career with Intel. Started as an engineer because I thought, I've got to build these things. I'm going to design them. And I quickly realized I could participate in a very different way. I didn't have to build them. So I spent a lot of time in marketing, business development, communications, strategic planning, and eventually rose to be one of Intel's two futurists working in Intel Labs and Intel's chief evangelist. So, spreading the good word about how technology can solve human problems and make our lives better. Because that's fundamentally why I got into the industry, and it's why I remain in it today, because I think technology can be used right, can be an incredibly powerful force for good. And so I spend time with my clients encouraging them to embrace technology as a way to make the world better for people.
You know, I almost actually got chills right there when you were talking about that, because my uncle started with the Air Force and transitioned to lead systems designer for NASA. And I remember he came over during the holidays one year, and he had this box of pieces, and he actually assembled a computer system for my grandfather. And he had that, the monitor was actually, in all fairness, two colors, green and black.
Ooh, okay.
And and it was so far back in time that those transitions have happened so fast as far as the technology and the different iterations and development. That's such a fascinating point, because I you know, kind of time traveled briefly back to that point when I saw this box of pieces and stuff like that, how my first interactions with the modem and the sounds of the modems and the dial-up and all of that. It's absolutely amazing. So why is it that you have continued doing the type of work that you do when you had started this type of work with Intel? What continues to drive you and inspire you about this? What's your why?
My why is we have a lot of challenges as a species, as a planet. You know, there are a lot of human problems to solve. There are some environmental problems to solve, and I think that there's a lot being left on the table. Historically, the IT industry, the computer industry, its bread and butter has been focused on improving productivity and making things more efficient. And that's great. It's led to big strides forward in the way that we live our lives. And our modern lives, if you think about all the different pieces of technology you interact with on a daily basis, pretty much everything you touch is there because of computing and semiconductors. Even the toothbrush you use in the mornings, right? That was designed on a CAD tool on a computer to make it the way it is and align all the bristles to get all the stuff off your teeth. Everything you use in modern world is as a result of computers, but there's so much more we could do. And so when I think about going beyond productivity and efficiency and raising our aim to be able to improve working conditions, to solve really big human problems, address climate change by changing the way that we source and build and ship products, for example, to eradicate child labor, to make our food safer to eat. There are lots of big knotty problems that technology can help with. And so that's why I stay in the game, is because my goal is to open people's minds up. That's why I call my company Possibility and Purpose. Open their minds up to the massive landscape of possibility, because there's the suite of new technologies that's coming enables us to solve a whole new set of problems that could not be solved with what I'd call sort of classic computing technology, which is your PCs and smartphones and cloud connections, right? AI, blockchains, augmented reality, sensors, 5G networks, things like that will all come together and we can solve some really big knotty problems. So I'm in the game to inspire people to look afresh and to look to technology to drive massive amounts of innovation into our modern lives.
What are you doing that will allow for us to have that transparency? Because I just kind of think about the world now, and I mean, there were a lot of issues with understanding even like where gemstones come from if they were in a conflict zone or something like that. What are you actively working on that will allow us to have that type of information and make critical decisions at time of purchase?
So yeah, I'm involved as a co-founder of this company called the Provenance Chain Network. They're an Oregon-based organization, but with global reach. And the goal of the organization is to bring transparency to global commerce. It's a pretty big goal. But the idea is to empower consumers with the knowledge that they need to make more informed decisions. Because when you're looking at a couple of T-shirts in the store, and one of them is $12 and one of them is $10, well, which one do I buy? I'll buy the $10 one. Well, if I could do a quick scan with my phone and find out that the $10 t-shirt, yeah, I'm not sure where that came from, but I know that this $12 t-shirt is guaranteed through an audit that has been validated to not have been made in a sweatshop by children.
Mm.
I'm going to buy the $12 t-shirt. So it allows you to then put a value on non-child labor, and to start to enable brands to be rewarded for doing the right thing. And it also is a tool that enables brands to sort of project their brand values back up through the supply chain and drive compliance with their suppliers to make sure that the promise that they're making to consumers is kept.
Wow.
So that's what that's all about. And it's a huge undertaking.
That's what was my next question. And so it sounds like you're doing the work now, but when can a consumer, I mean, what is that time frame? What does that look like for the development of these systems, for implementation of these technologies and stuff like that? What kind of time frame are we looking at? Is it just a couple years, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I think you'll see this start to provide some value, some basic value within a couple of years. And then the capability will be built out literally over the next couple of decades, probably. Because what you're talking about is gathering an enormous amount of data, sorting through it, validating it, and then surfacing that to a consumer in a way that they can find useful. And you've got to gather all of that data. So it's going to require deployment of sensors, using AI to monitor those sensors, and be able to validate all this information so that instead of brands making claims to consumers through labeling or whatever it might be, or advertising, they're now able to not just bring claims, but proof and the way that they're manufacturing, shipping and delivering products to consumers, so consumers can feel confident when they make those purchases. And what it's doing is it's enabling sort of the rise of the activist consumer who wants to vote for brands and to vote with their wallets in the way that they purchase. So sort of conscientious consumers, and empowering those purchase decisions.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing work that you all are doing. I know individuals who used to do that with like how they invested, but this is a totally different level. That's amazingly exciting. Now, as far as the work that you do as a futurist and stuff, when I started to, because my background, I had worked with coding and robotics and these different things, and I used to think, these technologies were going to replace all these amazing individuals and stuff, and it was a very imbalanced view. And how is it that you see things differently in the work that you do? Because it really isn't just about taking away, it's actually about adding value and assisting our fellow human beings, if you will, with the work that you're doing. How do you see the world differently? What allows you to do that?
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about automation, and people are naturally scared about being replaced by a robot or an AI, and I get that. And there's some accuracy in that for some people in some classes of jobs. If you're a truck driver, yeah, your days may be numbered. Maybe 10, 15 years from now, it may become kind of fully automated, at least for the long distance part of the truck driving. But for the majority of us, the way new technology will show up in our lives will not be to automate us out of a job. It will be to take on the tasks we don't really want to do, the dirty, dangerous, and drudgery work, the 3Ds, and it will elevate our capabilities, and it make us more capable. It'll augment our creativity, our imagination, our intuition, our empathy, our decision-making skills, and help us to do a better job. And it will elevate us to be able to do more meaningful, more rewarding, and more interesting work. So the future of work, I think, is augmented work, where we can offload some of the boring tasks and focus on the stuff that really matters. And so I don't think we have an automation problem. What we have, if anything, is an educational challenge as we reskill and upskill people to be able to take on these really exciting new jobs.
Absolutely. And it sounds like it allows them to look more at their passion and purpose. And I know a lot of the stuff that you're talking about now, I can see behind you there that you've written a book.
Yeah.
And what is that all about?
Well, I spend a lot of time with the management teams or boards of companies. And it became increasingly clear to me in the conversations that I was having that while these are the most strategic thinkers in any company, and their job is to think about the strategy for a company, they're often distracted with many sort of tactical issues. I don't have that distraction. Sure, I have to manage my client portfolio and that sort of thing, but I spend a lot of time thinking about some of the big questions. How will work change? What new business models will evolve out of these new technologies that are coming? What is the role of AI in society? And really understanding these technologies in a deep way. As I was talking to these leaders, it became clear that the pace of technology acceleration had outstripped their ability to understand the impact those technologies would have on their business. And it's not fair to ask the chief medical officer of a hospital or the chief marketing officer of a manufacturing company, I'm just making it up as I go along here. It's not fair to ask them to be experts on healthcare and manufacturing, and also to be experts on AI and the impacts of AI on society and on their industry. So that's why I wrote this book, because I realized these leaders needed help. So the book is written as a kind of a how-to guide on technology innovation. So the subtitle is How 6 Strategic Technologies Will Reshape Every Business in the 2020s. So I did a lot of research for this book, and it's packed with little stories, examples of companies on the leading edge who are already embracing AI, blockchain, sensors, augmented reality, 5G and satellite networks, and autonomous machines, which is robots, drones, cobots, and so on, to solve real business problems and across a wide range of industries. So there's chapters in here on lessons you can learn about the future of healthcare, or the future of manufacturing, or the future of supply chain, the future of real estate and construction. So it's designed to be an easy read, an informative read, hopefully a fun read, aimed initially at leaders, but anybody that's interested in how technology is going to reshape the next decade, this book's for you. And the thing I'll leave you with is, because the technologies I talk about in this book are so powerful, and the combination of them makes them even more powerful, I suspect we will see, or expect we will see, more change in business in the next decade than we've seen in the last 40 or 50 years as a result of technology innovation. I know that's a bold statement, but I really believe that's true.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And something's come up a couple times as far as like timelines for different things. How has COVID shifted the timelines? Because things that I should have only seen maybe 5 and 8 years or 10 years from now, we're seeing those things now. How has COVID shifted those timelines? Because not only is your book, and I can't wait to read through it, very timely, and with those 6 key types of technology, but how have the timelines shifted for companies?
Yeah, good question. Because clients are calling me and saying, "Hey, we're dusting off our 5-year plans. We want to implement them this year," and that's happening a lot. So the way I think about COVID, and I've spent a lot of time sort of stepping back and thinking about, what does this really mean for us? How is this going to shape what's next? And I look at it as sort of 3 ways. It is the great reflector, and it's given us all time to reflect on what's important, the fragility of our lives, the fragility of society, and so on. It's the great accelerator, in that it's accelerating automation, digitization. It's accelerating the rise of companies that were already on the rise. Think Amazon. It's accelerating the fall of companies that were already on the fall. Think Macy's, JCPenney, some of those traditional retailers. And companies that had already invested in going digital are the ones that have been doing really well during this pandemic, and those that didn't are the ones that haven't. So that's why you're seeing this massive rush to digitize and to automate, partly because robots don't get sick and autonomous delivery trucks don't carry disease. But it's just that it's been the great accelerator. I'd also offer that I think COVID has been the great defroster. Mm-hmm. So organizations or industries that were frozen in place because of tradition, think education, regulation, so think healthcare, or just complacency, inertia, a cultural risk aversion, they're being defrosted and change agents are emboldened. The question is, how much change can you get done during this period of time before the organization or industry kind of freezes back into place? And what will that new shape be? So this is a window of opportunity to drive change. And I'll give you an example in telehealth, right? The rise of telehealth. No one used telehealth, or very few people used it before COVID. Now almost half of Americans have done a telehealth visit, at least one. And Forrester Research says we're on track for 1 billion telehealth visits this year in the United States alone. Wow. You're not going to put that genie back in the bottle. We're not going back to, schlepping ourselves down to the doctor's office to be coughed on by everybody else.
Yeah. And that's a fascinating example, because a lot of insurance companies didn't even see that as an actual visit. They couldn't even get compensated. So I think that affects the implementation of certain technology sometimes. In fact, I love the videos that you have out on YouTube. The last one, I was watching the video and stuff. And if the audience hasn't taken a look at any of the videos that Steve's done, I highly recommend that you do. But there was something that you talked about called vocal biological markers. And it really sounded very fascinating to me. It almost sounds like you're taking the organic and they're creating technology-based systems to be able, because people would used to say, well, my dog somehow or cat somehow innately knew that I had an illness or cancer or something. There's mm-hmm. something to that?
There is. So we often think of AI as being, a technology that will be an automation technology. But AI is fundamentally a pattern finding technology. It finds patterns in seas of data. And, we use that capability to do machine vision or to create these voice agents that you can talk to in your home. It's just doing pattern matching to try and understand what you're saying. So it's a big pattern matcher. And it turns out that AI can find patterns that we can't see. So we are pattern matching engines. That's what our brains do. When we analyze the visual information coming into our eyes, we're analyzing and looking for patterns. So we have pretty good sensing capabilities. AI, as I write about in chapter 1 of my book, will enable us to create what I call super sensors. AI is like a lens to help us see the world more fully. And what you mentioned there, the example of a company from Israel called Vocalis Health, Vocalis, Vocalis Health. They have identified, using AI, vocal biomarkers, particular signatures in the sound of your voice that indicate disease states. And this is not a quackery organization. They have been working with the Mayo Clinic in the United States, and they have successfully done trials where they can hear chronic heart failure, coronary artery disease, sleep apnea in the sound of your voice.
Wow.
Now, think about that for a minute. That's pretty amazing. And they're already working on a diagnostic to be able to hear COVID-19 in the sound of your voice. So they've already got that successfully done. It's in trials to prove that it works to everybody's satisfaction. But imagine being able to speak into a microphone and get an answer like that. Yep, you've got it. Or you're in the clear, without having to have a swab shoved up your nose and then wait 8 days, which is, worthless in terms of result anyway.
You're saying that there is the potential to call in for work that morning and to know whether or not you have some type of disease or something?
I mean, you could
that kind of
sign up. I mean, I'm sort of imagining the way this might work. You could have an app that you periodically speak into to say, hey, check me out. Am I okay? Or you could have it as an app that you enable on your, Amazon, Google, puck of choice that you have in your house, those smart speakers, to just constantly be analyzing and making sure you're okay. Because Vocalis Health, they're already working on looking for vocal biomarkers for hypertension, diabetes, and even cancer in the sound of your voice.
Wow. That's revolutionary. That's absolutely amazing.
It is, and it's just one example of many where AI is going to provide this lens on reality and help us see the world way more fully than we ever could without it.
Well, this is absolutely amazing. And I know our time for our interview draws near. What are 2 or 3 things that you could encourage or share with individuals watching this video? Maybe they're just average, everyday individual employee or business owner, that with all of this change, what are 3 things that they should be aware of, or that they may be able to change in their lives to keep up with or benefit or position themselves better with all of this change?
I'll give you 2 because we're over time and I've got to go to another meeting. But they're good 2. So the first one is improve your technology literacy. Learn more about technology, in part because it'll make you less afraid of it, because you'll learn how powerful it can be for good and what its limitations are. We're afraid of the things we don't fully understand. So empower yourself to ask the right questions by becoming more technology literate. My book is perfect for doing that. The second thing is to think big, to imagine what this future might look like and to prepare for it yourself. And that means making sure that you are robot proof, that you have the skills that you need to be valuable and to thrive in what I'm calling the post-automation economy. There's a whole chapter on that in my book on what those skills are, but it's fundamentally the skills that are uniquely human: creativity, communication skills, collaboration abilities, critical thinking, and so on, empathy, entrepreneurial skills, the things that robots and AIs will never be able to do. Double down on those and everybody will be okay.
Perfect. Thanks so much for your time today. How can somebody connect with you if they're interested in the work that you do?
Easy. You can find me at baldfuturist.com, B-A-L-D, I have no hair, baldfuturist.com. And then you can follow me on Twitter at baldfuturist, Instagram, baldfuturist, Facebook. You can find me pretty easily. Just Google baldfuturist. You can find me on LinkedIn. And I'd be, anybody that's interested, you can also watch my videos. It's slightly different there. It's YouTube/the baldfuturist. Don't know why, but that's just the way it is.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing today. I hope everybody has enjoyed this V3Connect Focus on the Community interview. Thanks for your time today, Steve.
My pleasure. Really nice talking to you, Dave.